I suppose. There you go.
It's being recorded.
Who is doing it?
Someone.
I clicked, so I'm probably doing it.
Professor, it's a pleasure again. I was saying it's great to have Beatrice talking to us today for a zillion reasons. First of all, she's a wonderful person. She's a brilliant mathematician, and it would be very easy to prove it. She got all kinds of prizes. For example, she was a Taussky lecturer at the big congress in ICIAM in 2011. She actually, now let me check something even more complicated. She was a Mary Cartwright lecturer. You guys should know who Mary Cartwright is, by the way, of the London Math Society. And
the first woman president of the London Math Society.
Oh, not to mention the fact that she worked with strange differential equations. That was even more fundamental. And besides, she's been all over the place. We met when she got her PhD at Yale with Peter Jones. Then she went to Imperial College, then a long period in reading. Now she went to Scotland. She is a professor at Heriot. I have one of those messy names. The Heriot Watt University. And more important than all this moving around is the fact that she's absolutely dedicated to what a department should do within a university, within a society, with respect to students, research, industries. So to be fair, I think Beatrice should be called from the very start of this set of meetings we've been having. It's just that I was waiting for us to sort of gain momentum. And I think the time is more than appropriate. Beatrice, please entertain us, teach us, teach us everything. Teach us everything.
What an introduction. Now I feel. So first of all, please stop me. I'm not entirely sure what you are expecting to learn or hear, but if there is something I am not saying that you would like to know about, do go ahead and ask. I can only tell you my view on things, having been now in the UK for 25 years, working practically all my professional life has been there. And the UK, as you see in my poor attempt of a Portuguese title, is not really one. There are very significant differences even within it in terms of policy and who decides educational matters and where the research money comes from and things like that. But as an intellectual place, it's one with differences, but it's one. And it has had a very long tradition of mathematics. And of course, they speak English, so they do feel that they have some claim to being a very strong mathematical community. I think the claim is valid, though it has been helped very much by the fact that a lot of people have come to the UK to work and stay. Okay, so I've prepared some slides just to make sure I don't forget any facts, and the slides only have facts, and I will try to dress them with my own version or experience of them. So in UK, right, mathematics since I've been there, the first 10 years were quite static, and then there was a sort of explosion of activity, of things that have started changing, more departments growing, funding coming the way of mathematics. And I think probably the real driver of this was the fact that being traditionally more open to applied areas, so Department of Mathematics in the UK are really big, broad churches where there's a core of those who do pure mathematics, which is anything algebra, topology, geometry, and analysis if it's pure enough. But there are also very people that would in Italy or in the US, and I'm sure in Brazil too, would not be in a department of mathematics, would be in engineering, would be in physics. And there is quite a big mix, and applied mathematics can be very, very applied. And of course, the tradition of the fluid mechanics, dynamics group in Cambridge has been very important and has continued. So anyway, the fact that it's such a broad church, I think has driven an openness to industry. And in 2010, there was a report from Deloitte, a big financial service firm, that put a number on the financial contribution of mathematics to the UK economy. And that sort of made a big impact. And suddenly funding started coming more. And students also, they could have been fed this fact every year on year on year. So actually the number of students interested in doing mathematics degrees started growing, and it hasn't stopped. So since I've been there, certainly I would say that the size of mathematics department has, in terms of student coming to do the first degree in mathematics, has easily doubled everywhere. So that has been a lot of movement, and then that has meant more stuff coming mostly from abroad, because in the end, although there is all this mathematics, still the level of education in some of the other European countries is very competitive. So they come and get a lot of the jobs, and also a lot of the people that study mathematics degrees go to industry, because that's why they came to do a maths degree in the first place.
Beatrice, just a moment, please. Andrea raised his hand.
I did.
I'm very
yeah.
surprised.
Let me just ask, well, since you mentioned it, well, anyways, so let me just quickly say, I've worked with an English mathematician essentially all my life, Toby Hall from the University of Liverpool. So I've been to Liverpool several times. And one of the things that has scared me is when they tried closing the Leicester math department. So
I will come back.
You'll talk about this at some point?
Yeah, well, I was going to, yes, but there have been 2 or 3 of these spikes of madness.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that they have been representative of the general sentiment in the sector or in the country. Yeah, I will come to Leicester. Leicester has been under threat a couple of times. They have a terrible choice of vice chancellor and vice chancellors in the UK. Although the universities are public, a vice chancellor, especially in an English university, is very powerful, really drives the strategy. And if someone comes with the idea that pure maths doesn't pay its way and we should all become industrial mathematicians or engineering mathematicians without generally knowing what they're talking about, then it's dangerous. And that's what's happened at Leicester.
Okay, thank you.
So
of course, you can always become a philosopher.
Maybe. So universities are all public. I think there's 1 or 2 that are not. But there are different rules. For example, in Scotland, Scottish students don't pay fees. It's the only country of the UK that still resists the idea of introducing fees. But in England, they pay quite heavy fees. Now it's almost £9,500 a year if you are an English student, and more than double that if you are an international student. So the university has been subsidized very heavily by international students, and it's very dependent on them. So in fact, between the pandemic and Brexit, there has been a really very serious crisis. I don't yet know how it will go, but financially speaking, that's not pure, specific to mathematics, is much more general. But there are also differences in attitude. So in Scotland, for example, Heriot-Watt University was founded as a college in 1821 as a night school for workers to increase their level of education with money from benefactors. And it has stayed quite true to that kind of ethos. So opening up to students from deprived communities, a lot of additional support for them and things like that. And that's very entrenched in the Scottish sector as a whole, much less in England. So there are differences, both financial and sort of intellectual, but mathematically, in terms of what type of mathematics we do, there is one research council for the whole of UK, and that drives where the money goes for everybody. Okay, this is not really important. The only reason I put this is that because I will send you the slides, and these are the links that you can follow up for yourself. The LMS in particular, the London Math Society, has a lot of interesting data, because getting data is super important for understanding what's really happening, and for make cases to government or to the Research Funding Council for getting money, or to the Office for Students for driving policy on student life, for example. And they are really very good at collecting the data and publishing them and keeping them up to date. So at this link that I have for the LMS, there is really quite a lot of interesting material if you want. So that's the only reason this slide exists, is so that you can get it later. And there has been these learned societies and the community in general. There is also an overarching society. It's called the Council for Mathematical Sciences, I think now.
Excuse me, Beatrice. Excuse me a moment. I'm surprised that you didn't provide a link to Planet Earth.
To who?
To Planet Earth. No, serious. That amazing project.
No, didn't I? Okay, I forgot.
Not in the previous slide.
Where do you say?
I don't know. Where can we get information about that project?
Yeah, I'll put it. It's coming later.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so there is a lot of political action for making the case for investment in mathematics. And as I said, this Deloitte, the financial impact analysis, was very pivotal. But after that, the community really pushed to have reviews of mathematics. And one that has been very influential is this Bond review. It's called The Era of Mathematics. And it sort of makes the case for the fact that mathematics underpins a lot of industrial advances, engineering advances in all sciences, and it's important per se, and it should be funded, both blue sky and applied things. And it actually has driven governmental policy in this, and it has made a big difference. And there are 3 institutes across the UK that really then provide the space and the time and the organization for having these discussions in the community. And they are, well, the Research Council funds them, at least partially, and calls them the infrastructure for mathematics. But they really are, you may know, the Newton Institute in Cambridge, which holds 6 months long programs, the ICMS in Edinburgh, which has shorter international meetings, and the Heilbronn Institute, which is really the public face of the GCHQ, which is the security agency. But they have been very important in providing the space for this discussion, for providing information and feedback to all these reviews, and that has fed through to the community. So it's been quite important. And so, apart from the very classical strength in pure mathematics, I think it has driven funding in very different directions. A lot of applied maths. It has also regenerated itself in different areas. It's not just fluid dynamics that was the traditional strength of the UK, but a lot of mathematical biology, mathematics for, and you add your favorite things for engineering, for informatics, for data science, for whatever. And maybe the downside of this, maybe a downside for mathematics, is that although before the funding was very much distributed across also small groups of mathematicians in the UK, now they tend to be funding given in large chunks and to bigger networks or consortia that work on large projects with a lot of partners and interdisciplinary partners, or just a lot of partners in mathematics. And one example of this, which is important because it trains the next generation, is how the UK has put money for the PhD work, PhD projects. So up until 5-6 years ago, each department got a grant that it could use for individual PhD students. Now that grant still exists, but it's much reduced. And most of the money goes to thematic centers for doctoral training, for which you have to apply. And there are maybe around 10, 15 in the UK of these doctoral training centers, only one in pure maths. There was one in analysis, two in analysis, and in the second round, even those didn't get funded. So the money is really going to mathematics as an underpinning to other things, much more. And I know quite a lot about these CDTs because when I was in Reading, I was involved in the first wave of these, in this nice CDT, Mathematics of Planet Earth, where instead of click to add the subtitle, I will add the link for this.
Great.
This was it was a lot of work to put this together, a lot of work to get this funded, to prepare the proposal, to think what we should do about it. But it was rewarding, and the students have really liked. And we've worked with the Met Office in the UK, for example, and all the students on this program spent 10 weeks in the course of their PhD at the Met Office just to see operational things, doing a specific project followed by some Met Office scientists. And even those who did, like my students really worked in PDEs. But even for them, this was quite an important experience. They all got something important out of it. This was how we solved it. But it wasn't, it wasn't climate science. This is the kind of projects that we had in it. PDE work, really a la Edris Titi, or PDEs of Navier-Stokes and family kind of problems, numerics, and then a lot of stochastic as well, stochastic modeling and calculus of variation. So absolutely mathematical, but with an eye to these kind of applications. And many other CDTs grew in this type of direction. So this is another one. This is in Edinburgh. I'm only tangentially involved with this, but it's the first incarnation of this was a CDT in analysis. Absolutely analysis, harmonic analysis, geometric analysis, classical analysis. The second round, it really changed to it's called mathematical modeling, analysis, and computation. And the central tenet in thinking about this was trying to use data within mathematical models and use the sort of having both sides of this universe of big data and mathematical tools that can really help make sense of them, with a lot of industrial partners that have actually put a lot of money in this. And because industry puts money, then the research funding also puts a lot of money. I'll have another last example. This is all for you. It's called Samba, but it's because the first director was Paul Milewski, who some of you I'm sure know, who is from your parts anyway. But they've had a lot of good ideas, and all these centers for doctoral training are connected and meet once a year and exchange students. So it has really revitalized the community of doctoral students, because they're suddenly not isolated. They really have a big community to be part of, which is organized. And I wasn't so sure it would be a good thing, but it has been a fantastic thing. This one is very much in probability and statistics, but they have this that I now see. They called them something else before, but now they call them integrative think tanks. And these are sort of sandpits meetings with a different industry each time, with concrete problems on the table, and the students asked to sort of try and find a way out around these problems and solve them, or give some ideas of how they could be solved. And they last a few days, and they provide very concrete applications of the training that these students get, and they're very popular. And in Bath, this center is in Bath, and they've also, so he said, they've also now launched this Institute for Mathematical Innovation. It's not clear to me yet what they do, but the name is sort of suggestive of in which direction the wind is blowing. But of course, you need to, so starting from PhD, I would say in the UK, up until 20 years ago, PhD training was non-existent. You did your 3-year degree, very narrowly focused on what you, and the PhD continued in that vein. You worked just on your project and learned nothing else. These CDTs have moved towards the US system of having taught courses and exams in the first year and having to get a breadth of education. And so it has made the UK community, which was very conservative on educational matters when I first arrived, really rethink how we have to teach this PhD student. This rethinking is starting to coming down also at undergraduate level, I would say, because the students were not following anymore so much. And we had a lot of students who were not clear on what they were studying and why. So there has been, in the last, especially the last 6-7 years already, there was a lot of anxiety about redrawing this curricula in the undergraduate courses that in some places were very static for a very long time. Put in more computations, put in more sessions, modeled on these sandpits for the PhD students had found quite good to work in groups on concrete problems. So concrete problem solvings, usually with an industrial partner coming in and talking about the problem itself, and then giving them 2 weeks to do it. A lot more of discrete mathematics, statistics, and probability as standard, not just for those who choose to study that. Because in the end, it's a very, very, very small minority of our undergraduate students that continue as mathematicians. Most of them go out and need a job, and these things, they need to find a job. Also, one thing that has been growing very rapidly is centers to think about how we teach them. My favorite one is this one in Loughborough that they called, I think they have dismissed the name now, but I thought it was a great name, Eureka Center for Mathematical Confidence. And in any case, the university had paid for 7 members of staff to be mathematics education specialists for the university. So that's a serious investment. And there are others like that now. They were the first at this scale. In Edinburgh now there is a research group in technology enhanced mathematical education, for example. And it's one that's starting to attract also some funding. And if you want to introduce these new programs, all these new graduate programs that have this title Mathematics of or for, these are real names here of programs that now exist in the UK. You cannot teach them quite in the same way, but in fact anything, the students in first year that encounter analysis, they need to learn it, but somehow the mode of teaching, how do we do that? Because this has been gone around and around the houses for years, that the students more and more found the lectures, particularly of analysis or incredibly linear algebra, very difficult to connect to. And so finding new ways of connecting to these students so that they get enjoyment out of them. It's a very big thing at the moment. It's certainly for us, for my school, we have put a lot of thought and we invite a lot of talks on it, for example, and have monthly meetings about who is doing what and what worked and what didn't work. And of course, in the pandemic, this has set us well, and it has also given a lot of impetus also to the others that weren't all that interested at the time. And I hope that if we come out of this really terrible 18 months or 2 years or how long it will be, that we have had this massive disruption to teaching, at least we use it to really revitalize also the contact with the students and how we talk about mathematics with them, how we connect with them. It may not be so difficult for you, but it certainly has been difficult for me personally and for the people that work with me and that I talk to. So I think that could be a very good opportunity for the community coming out of the pandemic, that at least some things have been broken of necessity, and when we put them back together, we put them back together in a different order or in a different way. Okay, I think these are all my slides. I probably had a lot of more things to say, but I think it's maybe better if you ask me what you would like to know, if anything of this is interesting to you.
I guess what you gave us is already a great starting point for a million questions. There's something unfair if I start raising questions to you, since I can only send you an email, right? So I'll give a chance to other people. Okay, guys.
So should I be like you, Tomé, and let other people talk, or should I shoot?
Come on, Andrea, go ahead.
So, well, right. So, like I said, I've been working with this English mathematician, been to Liverpool several times, and I've seen. So Liverpool in particular is very heavily dependent on mostly Chinese students these days.
The whole sector is.
The whole sector is, right. Now, one thing.
Let me ask you a favor before you continue. I'm sorry, Andrea. I'd like to interrupt you. Beatrice, how do you feel about shutting down your lecture so we can see each other?
It's a good idea.
And should we
continue
recording,
I
or
guess
stop recording so we can badmouth whoever and not be on record?
May I cancel your? Oops.
Oh, I found it.
Great.
Okay.
And I guess people are invited to open up their cameras, right? So that we sort of talk to each other.
Well, I open my camera and then.
Sure.
So, okay, so should I continue my question? So
you
right.
were saying.
Yeah, I was saying, and right, and then well, anyway, so I'm in Brazil, and then I see Toby in the UK, and I have a feeling that I'm not sure, this is a feeling, okay, but I have a feeling that he's much more under the thumb, so to speak, of the market forces. You know, it feels much more like the universities there have become part of the market. And here in Brazil, we still somehow have a bit of a feeling that we can afford, you know, to be intellectuals for the pleasure, you know, and in particular, doing pure math, right? So I still work with, you know, three-manifold topology and dynamical systems from merely, you know, because I enjoy it. And there's nothing pressuring me to please, you know, the market in particular, to please the students. So obviously I want to please my students, but not because, you know, if I don't please them, I'm going to be fired, like in Leicester or whatever. So I'd like to, you know, maybe you can say a little more about this.
So, as I said at the beginning, I feel very lucky that I work in Scotland. It's quite different in Scotland because the ethos is different. The fact that the local students don't pay fees is different. But financially speaking, the whole UK sector, it's very big, but it's completely dependent on the money, particularly of the Chinese. So it's been now for a few years trying desperately to differentiate, and I don't know where this will go. However, even when I worked in England, which I left in, well, 6 years ago, yes, there was some pressure, but you there is a very strong sense in British academia of the independence of the academic in the end. So in terms of how you teach, what you teach to your students, as long as you are not losing your whole class and they all leave the university because you were terrible, nobody really checks. So yes, the university feels under pressure because if the students don't come, suddenly they lose a lot of their financial income. But I wouldn't say that it comes down to the level of the department. So Leicester, yes, is a bad story. It's actually right now very bad. They have a terrible vice principal that wants to shut pure maths because they don't get grants of the size of things that are more applied, and transfer the money to data science. I don't think he knows what data science he means, but anyway, that it's not as the whole community in the whole of UK has risen up against this. It hasn't been stopped yet, but everybody has written, all the learned society, a lot of individuals, long letters. So I think it's a singularity, and it's absolutely true that it's a very business-driven model, more and more now that they have fees, but it hasn't yet broken it, the academic side, at least not in maths.
I'd like to make a footnote on this conversation. It turns out that even pure mathematicians as students need, after they graduate, they need jobs, right? So what to do in a context when universities are not infinitely growing, right?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was reading in the chat something about a question about information geometry. So there are groups, yes, as you say, in particular in Oxford, but in Southampton too, on topological data analysis. There is no training center. There are grants for these groups, so they're quite visible. But in pure maths, there is only one CDT, and it's a confederation of the London universities, and it's in geometry and number theory. And that's a bit of a concern. At this round, it was certainly very politically driven to support mathematics as looking towards out rather than as a research in itself. But it's how you use these things. So the fact that you call it mathematics for the real world system, in reality, it's that particular center is a mathematical and numerical analysis center.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
There is this battle, as André said before, one always needs to have a process of evaluating and go forward, no? But we know that this has to be imposed a little bit because, I mean, this is a human being, you know? If no one is imposing a review from outside, people will keep going and make minimal energy what they are going to do and what they're used to do. So I want to know this process, what was the beginning of this review, and how many students, you mentioned from outside, but from within England or UK better, how the UK students respond to this change and to in this mathematics teaching and to what was changed during this last year, and how you think this contribute also indirectly to broaden the horizon of researcher, even if forced at the beginning.
So for researcher, so let me break it a bit. I think the students, first of all, are really driving this, and they are very much the reason for changing. There is very positive feedback where there has been change that has been sort of thought through and explained and acted upon of course, as you say, absolutely, the course of least action is what you, even, if I have to teach a course and I already have the lecture notes, having to change them before doing the course is a big investment of time. But particularly this year, the investment at the beginning has paid really handsomely later on, because if you hadn't done it, translating this into the online tutorials and so on has really created much more work later on. The students didn't understand, the exam was difficult, the marking was impossible, and all of this. So it's just taking a bit of a longer view than just how much this will cost me for the next 4 weeks. And I'm not saying that this is how easy, but this is how I view it, and this is what I try to convey to anybody I talk to. And in the end, it will sort of prove the profession and the possibility of us to continue doing what we like doing, teaching and getting some satisfaction from it, and have time for research. It will prove it for the next stage, for the near future, let's say. I don't want to talk about the far future, but for the near future, yes. And yeah, there is a price to pay for having, the financial opportunity to do all these things, which is that the universities are run more like a business. In mathematics, because we have made the case quite so strongly for the importance, and because we have really strong people in the UK and a community that's recognized, we have been quite, on the whole, not everywhere, but on the whole, quite protected from too strong an influence, a detrimental influence from this.
And do you go to high school? Is there interaction between university and high school to recruit?
To recruit or for outreach?
Yeah, outreach for the student in high school to seek mathematics as a possibility.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of that. But as I say, mathematics at the moment is a very popular degree. So yeah, and there is that, particularly for, there is money for doing these things as well. Also a lot of money for example, programs for final year undergraduate students to make them think about doing a PhD in mathematics or postgraduate studies in mathematics. A lot of money is given for this, for organizing this kind of events or for organizing outreach events in schools. And once you have, if that money and support is there, it's easier for these things to actually happen, obviously.
Do you know, for a master's student or a PhD student, if there are programs to co-found, for example, our students to have also an advisor or in UK? Are there such a program?
So you keep the students in Brazil, but they are,
or they come there for an exchange program.
Exchange for a short time, yes. With all these centers have such exchanges with, but usually with a few places that they have contacts with, research contacts with. Generally, there's not per se a program to co-fund the co-supervision of students, international students that stay half and half. Not that I know of.
Yeah, because Canada has this wonderful program, a lab, that allows 1 quarter, and this I found it works perfectly, very nice, because a professor, a researcher from here ring up a professor there, and it's very easy to have a student spending a semester, 4 months there, and this is very nice.
Yeah, yes.
From what I understand, the situation in England directs money much more to collective projects, to institutions, than to separate researchers with all no interests. Is that true?
I didn't hear the last thing that you said. Can you repeat it?
I was left with the impression from your talk that money is much more directed to collective projects, to large-scale projects, and not to individual researchers who want to send a kid abroad occasionally.
It is now. There is more than half of the budget is for large projects, but in the large projects that are that have an educational component, there is usually space for these exchange programs. So all the CDTs have these exchange programs, for example. Of course, everything is paused in terms of physically visiting, but generally they're based on research contacts that existed already. So, but this will hopefully will grow, because it's certainly the way of the future, I would think. And given that we have seen, at least in this pandemic, that research we can do even from a distance in collaboration. It's probably easier than teaching online.
And keeps Greta Thunberg happier.
Huh?
And keeps Greta Thunberg happier.
Much happier.
There is something.
Well, I tell you, I had 2 invitations to Canada a month apart, and I've said I can only go once, and the other one I can do online only.
There is something you said before which intrigues me a lot. There used to be a time when that was the caricature one made of graduate students in England, right, in the UK. You would meet your advisor. The guy will essentially suggest a few courses. You will hang around for 2 years. Hopefully would come with some basic exams. You were ready for exams. You would start thinking about the thesis almost on your own. And in America, as you know well, things were very different, right? With a possible exception of places like Princeton, which actually changed something like almost 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. You should remember Peter Sarnak, Ingrid Dobeschi, right? Starting cohomology 1 and 2 in Princeton, right? Instead of getting the kids already to talk to churn, right? Yes. Which is what happened to Nicolau, for example, right? And apparently from what you're saying is that the UK is changing gears also, right? They're beginning to...
Absolutely, in maths for sure. And it's been driven from inside and from the people who did not get their training in the UK. So now all these centers have courses, and the students don't come to a project. They come to the center because they're interested in the general themes, and they have to do courses and then choose a supervisor. So it's much more like the US, but it was a big battle. It certainly was very different in the UK before, as you say.
Are pure mathematicians using computers or using computers?
Well, some are. I don't know everyone. I cannot answer for the whole thing. I'm right now in the panel for the research assessment exercise. And because we had to do all of these meetings online in the past few months, and all the papers that we had to read that were also all sent to us on an encrypted key and so on, there were a lot of technical problems, of course, at the beginning of how you could access and how you could communicate and all of that. And I have been so surprised that the technical prowess of my fellow mathematicians on the panel, I mean, amazing. It wasn't my experience until now.
They have younger kids than you do.
Maybe, yeah, surely.
But getting back to the job issue, since no one is raising questions, I'm very surprised. What happens to pure mathematician in the UK when they graduate?
So it depends what they want. What is the question? They can a maths degree in the UK, especially if it's from it's a good a first degree. So a first, it's the top classification of your degree from a university that is reputed and respectable, is very highly valued. So getting a job, the employability of maths graduates is very high.
But from the way you say it, it seems like the good old times when you got a degree in literature in Oxford and a bank would hire you.
They would hire you if you have a maths degree a lot sooner.
But in Oxford or all over the place?
No. Even it doesn't have to be Oxford necessarily. Of course, Oxford opens certain doors, not all doors, but certain doors more easily. But a maths degree from other, from Leeds, from Heriot-Watt, a first degree in maths, you find a job. There is a huge financial sector in the UK. It's all tertiary in the England. There's no industry really manufacturing industry to speak about. So they take the mathematicians.
There are still jobs.
So there are two raised hands, Celso and Samuel, right? I don't know in what order. I didn't pay attention.
There's someone I know from way back in this audience. Ciao.
Beatrice, long time no see.
Very long time no see.
How are you doing? Sorry.
I'm okay. I only just saw you, so sorry.
No, I only entered. No, I had a meeting until 10 minutes
That's
ago.
all right.
Yeah.
He's the president of the Brazilian Math Society, right? He should be in some business.
All I know is that we were students together in Rome.
We had the same advisor.
Yeah.
Gee, I mean, there's several people with raised hands. Tomei, acho que você tem que organizar as coisas, não? Ou então cada fala em cima dos outros.
Okay, to be
Tomei,
honest,
you're starting.
I'm very happy with the idea that you guys are making public statements, right?
O Celso levantou a mão e abaixou, o Samuel, a Márcia, o Marcos, Alexandrino. Bom, são
Marcos has been asking things in the underground for a while. Why don't you go public, Marcos?
Because they are still stupid questions. Hi guys, thank you very much for the talk. Thank you for the other question about information geometry. I have a very stupid and naive question about this old area very active in the past called the control theory or geometric control theory. I have the naive impression that nowadays this is more pure mathematical area. Is there some applications, in fact, in industry, or they just used the usual packets?
So I cannot answer that in any expert way. I really don't know. I mean, I've seen a few papers flying, but I'm not the right person to ask that.
You don't see that so much active as geometry theory and other stuffs related with the data science, is it? So
I wouldn't say so. Certainly not as visible, no.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I mean, I as I say, in this exercise of assessment, I haven't seen all the papers. I've seen a couple of papers on that, but it's not very visible to me. Maybe it's visible.
Perfect. Thank you. Are we trying to see the new trends? We understand that we need to talk to the students, even when the institution itself continues to be very old and very classical and don't care about. We need to train the students to see, okay, is that thing going on outside? And I just try to collect some information. Control theory, data science, it seems quite obvious. It appears everywhere. But yes, a control theory was for me something nice, because I am a pure mathematician who likes formation. So, but I started to realize, no, there is right now no research area so active in this field. It sounds something from economics, but it seems they kind of use the same package actually. No, thank you very much, Beatrice. Sorry for.
Sorry, can I help you more?
Thank you.
Marcia, would you like to go on with your questions?
Thank you, Tomei.
Come on. Marcia, would you like to go ahead?
Samuel, my turn? Okay. Yes. Beatrice, I don't know if I understood. Yeah, it was him.
Sorry,
I don't know if I, sorry?
I couldn't hear you, but now I've raised the volume, so go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if I could understand well, but I understood that you said you did some changes to teach during the pandemic.
Mhm.
Which kind of discussion did you do? Did you change the program of the courses or the curriculum? How did you make this discussion?
One big change was how the assessment, the exams, rather than do exams, for example, we did a lot more of what they call continuous assessment during the term rather than just at the end. And that drives different other changes. If you start thinking of that, then you have to reorganize also how you give the stuff to the student and in what kind of sequence you discuss with them and so on. That was an immediate, clear change without much thinking. Then now there is a lot more thinking about the sequence of what should come first, what should get more prominence in the program. But it's not. This is constantly moving, and I cannot say I'm an expert. I just see it, and I personally consider it important because certainly the last few years of my own teaching, in undergraduate, I'm talking about the style of the response from the students has changed very much, and it's far more difficult to understand where they are, how I'm communicating with them. That's my own personal feeling.
And did you do it collectively? Because in a certain sense, yes, our lectures now, they are public in a certain sense. In a sense that sometimes we record them, so we have this in a record, and I feel it's a very different situation for us also. So you try to do it collectively. Yeah, and the second thing is just a quick thing. When you said you have, I didn't understand well, but you mentioned mathematics for world planet. Which kind of? It was mathematics for world. You mentioned in one of.
No, I mentioned the title of two of the Center for Doctoral Training. One was Mathematics for Planet Earth. Is that the one?
Planet Earth. Yeah, this one. And which kind of discussions could you say? You said that in the end, it was restricted to numerical methods to.
No. Okay, I know what you're talking about. I said that sometimes the names might, cover. Seem very applied, but the sort of the skeleton of the program is very mathematical. That's what I said. It has certainly, proper analysis, proper numerical methods, or whatever it is, probability, whatever it is that the program needs. But although in some, the end game is to be able to be interdisciplinary, or some of the students to become interdisciplinary, the skeleton is very mathematical, is what I was saying. It's not.
And do you have any expectation? This is a trend now of the discussion on the relation of science and the planet, the world.
So what's the question? Sorry.
Do you have a feeling that this is a trend in the discussion? This will transform the way we do science in a certain sense?
I don't know, but making sure that one makes the case that some important advances really depend on quite sophisticated and advanced mathematics is important, because especially when there are these slightly vague and sort of a la mode sounding area like data science or climate science, you know, making sure that there is also proper mathematical content to this and that the mathematicians can contribute, it's an important thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Samuel.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Beatriz, for telling us how is math education in UK, especially in Scotland. And I'd like to know a little bit more, because I think it's important to know how is there, because probably we are going ahead copying by force sometimes the same trend. I mean, most of our departments of mathematics in universities of Brazil are quite large, because we offer math for all courses, engineers and everything. Is it the same in UK, or is it kind of, it depends?
It depends. Some universities, yes, some no.
And then the next question that I'd like to discuss is, well, as you said, we change for the teaching using a lot the remote teaching, and maybe some of these things will be last for a long time, and I guess we can actually use a lot these educational tools for teaching our students in large and very large classrooms, because the physical space limitation is no longer a problem. On the other hand, as you said, the assessment, the examinations, the grades, these are not so simple for doing by internet. So how you think is going to be the next future? Is it possible that to have, for example, some very good teachers doing the lectures for a large audience, and then maybe SBM doing the assessment in very small places and in form of a presential examination? How do you think that is going to be?
So I don't think I am an expert here, okay? I think that the community has to ask these questions and has to discuss them really seriously, not just paying lip service and thinking just about the practicalities or the convenience of doing one thing or another. Okay, so I don't know, maybe assessment has to change entirely. Maybe exams shouldn't happen in the way where they've always happened, given that we have all these other means of communicating and checking knowledge. Maybe, I don't know, but I just think that the community in each of its incarnations has to debate these things and think a bit outside the box and try to waterproof our the methodology a bit for the future. I hate to say this, but it's 9:30 here in the UK, and I messed up with the time zone. So I've actually have got people in my home, so I have to go now.
Beatriz, thanks a lot. I'm sure we'll be talking about whatever you said, and we'll be having questions which will be addressed on some occasion, right? So please.
honestly, this was just a provocation to debate. The important thing is to debate these things and try to,
Wise words, wise words.
to forge a path together.
So why don't we do the following? You go and handle your guests, and we'll go on talking about you, and then we'll report.
And I'll stop recording.
Thank you very much, everyone,
up-
for joining.
Thank you,
On the
Beatrice.
contrary,
Thank
we are
you.
so
Bye-bye.
happy that you joined us.
Ciao Paolo, un
Ciao,
gran piacere
Beatrice.
vederti.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.